the historic passing of the torch in the Democratic Party. President Joe Biden ended day one of the DNC by looking back at his more than 5-decade-long career and forward to Vice President Kamala Harris's official nomination in his ceremonial roll call. The vice president also made a surprise appearance last night. Now, Tony, as you know, is leading our DNC coverage. He's in Chicago. Tony, how you holding up? Because we were on the air way past midnight last night.
Yeah, the morning came extra early because the night was so long. Some of our viewers may have fallen asleep, so we'll clue them into what they missed. Joe Biden's speech didn't start until after 11 p.m., and what was billed as a day one keynote spilled all the way into day two. 50 years in public life he covered. He was too young to be president when he started in public life, and now, as he joked from the stage, he's too old, apparently. But in addition to being a sort of goodbye, his speech was also a handoff to Kamala Harris, who got the loudest applause of the night by far. And all the other big speeches, from Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to 2016 Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton, among many, many others, they all made the case for Harris as the one who, as Clinton put it, can finally break that highest and hardest glass ceiling. Now, outside the arena, there was a different scene as people protested the White House's handling of the war in Gaza, and some clashed with police after breaking through a barrier. But inside this arena last evening, joy and admiration. And for more on that, we are joined by our chief White House correspondent, Nancy Cordes. Nancy, good morning.
Good morning to you, Tony. And admiration for the keynote speaker, the President of the United States, who really capped a raucous night one and a reinvigorated party that feels a lot more bullish about its chances. The president was greeted with an extended standing ovation, a show of gratitude after he agreed to step aside.
It's been the honor of my lifetime to serve as your president. I love the job, but I love my country more. Before
a sea of "We Love Joe" signs, and with Kamala Harris looking on, President Biden addressed the convention that just weeks ago was planned for him, but now centers around his vice president.
Selecting Kamala was the very first decision I made when I became our nominee. And it was the best decision I made my whole career.
Biden highlighted their joint accomplishments over the past 4 years, casting the race as a battle for the country.
We saved democracy in 2020, and now we must save it again in 2024.
Harris made a surprise appearance earlier in the night to pay tribute to the president.
Joe, thank you for your historic leadership, for your lifetime of service to our nation, and for all you will continue to do. We are forever grateful to you.
Night one of this convention was focused on the future and what a Harris presidency would look like, drawing a sharp contrast with former President Trump on abortion rights.
Their policies give rapists more rights than their victims. That's not inconvenient. It's just plain wrong.
The speakers also highlighted Trump's criminal record.
Kamala Harris has a resume. Donald Trump has a rap sheet.
The economy was another focus.
The truth is, Don, you cannot love this country if you only fight for the wealthy and big business.
There was a particular emphasis on workers' rights. As a new CBS News poll finds, Harris has the support of a solid majority of union households.
Kamala Harris is one of us. She's a fighter for the working class. And Donald Trump is a scab.
And with Harris poised to potentially make history as the first woman president, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was there to remind Democrats of how close they got to achieving that milestone 8 years ago.
Together, we've put a lot of cracks in the highest, hardest glass ceiling. And tonight, so close to breaking through once and for all.
She warned them not to get complacent. Elections are unpredictable.
No matter what the polls say, we can't let up.
Hillary Clinton, of course, up by about 7 points this time in her campaign. Joining Nancy is CBS News contributor Ashley Etienne, former communications director for Vice President Kamala Harris. Ashley, I want to start with you.
Morning.
The polls were showing Hillary Clinton ahead back in 2016, so Democrats can't sit on where they are and think things are going to go well. Were they successful last night, even though they were late, even though the speeches were not short, in bringing the message to the public?
Absolutely. The goal for last night was to tell the arc of the legacy, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's legacy, from bringing us out of COVID to building the strongest economy in the nation, bipartisan legislation and successes, from guns to infrastructure. That was the goal. And the reason why is because his legacy is actually her legacy. So the president's telling White House staffers, we got to keep running through the tape. It doesn't just matter for the American people, but it matters to continue to bolster her candidacy.
You know, politics is a human endeavor. That's why it's messy. It's possible there can be hurt feelings. Were there in the Joe Biden address?
Joe Biden insisted in his address last night that there weren't. In fact, he was pretty blatant about it. He said, all these people who think that I'm still angry at Democratic leaders for pushing me out, well, I'm not. I care about my party more. Now, that's not what we've heard from some of our sources behind the scenes at the White House, but nevertheless, he's trying to make a public statement that he's putting that behind him and that he is full steam ahead in support of his vice president.
You know, Ashley, it's remarkable that Kamala Harris is so famous and yet for many voters still unknown. And so part of the mission here is to fill in the blanks on her bio, who she is and what she stands for. What did you make of the speeches last night on that point? And can you take us ahead to tonight when the Obamas are going to be speaking?
Sure, absolutely. CBS released a poll yesterday that showed there's a significant, sizable number of Americans who don't still yet know Kamala Harris. So the goal last night was to really unpack who she is, to tell her story. And what I know her to be is someone who sees people, has a heart and a compassion for people. So that was part of the objective. But the other part was to let the American people know that they can see themselves in her. She's from a middle-class background, child of immigrants, worked her way through college as a prosecutor who took on corporate greed on behalf of the American people. So that was the goal last night. They're going to keep telling that story throughout the rest of the convention, but beyond the convention, because that is more important than anything else, to let the people know why she's the right leader for this moment. So that's the point that Obama's going to drive tonight. Why is Kamala Harris the right leader for this moment?
And the Obamas still very popular within the party. There are a lot of Democrats here who'd like to see them out on the campaign trail more.
Yeah, and reproductive rights were a big part of last night's, I think night two will have more of the same, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're going to hear that message throughout the convention because it's the #1 attack line on Donald Trump.
Ladies, thank you very much. Gayle, send it back to you in New York.
All right.
All right, Tony, thanks very much. I'll take it from here. Our coverage of the Democratic National Convention continues on CBS Mornings, the CBS Evening News, on our streaming channel, CBS News 24/7, and in primetime, starting at 10 p.m. Eastern on CBS. Former President Donald Trump is touring battleground states during the DNC. He spoke exclusively in Pennsylvania yesterday to our Caitlin Huey-Burns and slammed Democrats over President Biden's decision to step aside.
They took a man who won, and they said, get out of here, Joe. This is a coup, and if you don't get out the nice way, we're going to get you out the bad way. Get out of here, Joe. It was a terrible thing they did. And then they put him on Monday night. You know what that's called? That's called like the worst night, okay?
Well, you can see more of Caitlin's interview with the former president in our next hour.
George Santos, the first member of Congress to be expelled in more than 20 years, is set to go to prison after pleading guilty to criminal charges yesterday. The New York Republican finally admitted stealing from political donors, using campaign contributions for personal expenses, and lying to Congress. He apologized to his family, constituents, and his supporters.
I understand that there are legal consequences for my actions, and I accept them fully. This plea is not just an admission of guilt. It's an acknowledgement that I need to be held accountable, like any other American that breaks the law.
A very emotional George Santos there could pay around $370,000 in restitution, more than he would have earned in a full 2-year term in Congress. He will be sentenced in February.
This morning, Israeli leaders say they have accepted a proposal for a ceasefire in Gaza, according to the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. He says Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu endorsed a U.S. plan intended to bring Israel and Hamas to a final agreement. Now, Blinken urged Hamas leaders to accept it and end the fighting. But one Hamas official told CBS News they, quote, didn't receive any new proposals. Meanwhile, this morning, Israel's army says it recovered the bodies of 6 hostages held by Hamas since its deadly attack on October 7.
And now we want to check in with Ian Lee. He's along the Russia-Ukraine border. Troops involved in Ukraine's surprise push into Russian territory showed him, without revealing their location, how they did it. We should mention that Ukraine's army reviewed our video, but they had no control over Ian's reporting. Here is his report.
This road carries more than troops and supplies. It's transporting the hopes of a nation. A vital supply line connecting Ukraine with its offensive in Russia's Kursk region. Our journey to the border reveals the high cost of war.
Just looking around at the horizon, you can see plumes of smoke coming from different directions.
As we arrive at the last checkpoint, we're told a Russian glide bomb has hit in the distance.
We are right on the border with Russia, and if the amount of military hardware is anything to go by, this offensive shows no sign of slowing down.
As far as Russia from here?
Скільки метрів звідси Russia? 50 meters.
50 meters. This is as far as we go.
Around 2 weeks ago, Russia was in control of that side of the border. 50 yards down, that's Russian territory. But as you can see from the damage here, Ukrainian forces smashed through this point and they're pushing deeper into the Kursk region.
Tucked in the surrounding dense forests, mortar teams support the Ukrainian troops pushing forward. And just beyond this border crossing, Ukraine claims to have captured nearly 500 square miles of Russian territory. A buffer zone Kyiv hopes will protect residents in the region. For CBS Mornings, I'm Ian Lee on the Ukraine-Russia border.
This morning, Phil Donahue's fans and colleagues are honoring the talk show host who started a revolution in daytime television. His family says the 20-time Emmy winner died Sunday night after a long illness. He was 88 years old. Donahue was first to realize the public could play a crucial role on television, making the audience part of the conversation.
For nearly 3 decades, Phil Donahue was the undisputed king of daytime talk.
Thank you. I am flattered. You may be seated.
The Ohio native got his start in 1967 when he was hired to host a morning talk show in Dayton, which soon gained national syndication.
How often do you look at the guests and you're sitting there and you say to yourself, who booked this?
Are you thinking this now, Phil? With his trademark Midwestern charm, Donahue began breaking with tradition, allowing his audience members, many of them women, to participate in the conversation.
What led you to enter the field of politics?
I'm still asking myself that. Donahue was unafraid of addressing taboo subjects, including war, race, religion, and sexuality. His pioneering approach to daytime TV spawned countless spiritual successors, including Oprah Winfrey and Ellen DeGeneres. On Monday, Winfrey took to social media to thank him, saying, quote, "There wouldn't have been an Oprah show without Phil Donahue."
Phil Donahue.
Donahue's service to television and the country was recognized earlier this year when President Biden awarded him with the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Through thousands of daily conversations, Phil Donahue steered the nation's discourse and spoke to our better angels. I wish you were still speaking there, pal. It made a big difference.
What a life.
He really did. He changed the game. First time I met him, I was in awe. I saw an interview with him this morning. He said, "I kicked big tires, fought City Hall, entertained along the way now and again."
And we should all want
He
a
was
career
amazing.
like that.
Yes.
We should all want a career like that. I remember as a kid watching the Donahue show. I just thought to myself, man, if I could do even a little bit of what he does and do it in the way that he does it, I might have a career in this game. You know? It's like, so he's an inspiration for everybody.
And thinking about Marlo Thomas today, who met, she was a guest on his show.
Yes.
The two of them were a knockout.
Over 45 years. They were married together. We'll miss
Bravo,
you.
Phil Donahue.
Yes.
88 years. If we're all so lucky. In today's Money Watch, we're focusing on a sharp rise in criminals targeting job seekers. The Identity Theft Resource Center says employment scams rose 118% last year. The FBI says they cost people more than $70 million in 2023 alone. Senior consumer investigative correspondent Anna Warner is here with tips to keep you safe from scammers. Good morning, Anna. So first and foremost, how does this work?
Well, good morning, Jerika. And you won't be surprised to hear that AI is getting into the picture. Experts say that criminals are using artificial intelligence to send text messages with job offers, claiming to pay you hundreds of dollars a day for remote work. But before you start, guess what? They'll need sensitive personal information like your social security number. Experts say, guess what? That's a scam. According to the Better Business Bureau, text messages will say things like, we offer a job that takes only 30 minutes a day. Wouldn't we love that? Or they'll post phony listings on job search websites like LinkedIn or Indeed. The job could be anything from reshipping products to selling things to people you know. It will include phrases like being your own boss, setting your own schedule, and beware if you're being asked for money up front. They're going to send you an invoice for payment, advance payment of on-the-job equipment, certificates, or job training with the purchase or the promise they'll reimburse you. And the scammers often ask, as we said, for that sensitive personal information to fill out things like quote-unquote employment paperwork. Guess what? It's all to steal your money and your identity. That's their goal. They're not giving you some great job where you can work 30 minutes a day.
So you know what to look out for. How specifically should people protect themselves? What can they do?
Well, you know, the first thing I always do, frankly, is just delete them. Those scam texts that come in, and they tend to come in bunches, right? But do your research. So if you really think it's serious, look up the name of the company or the person who's hiring you and the words scam. Yeah, and see if it's a scam.
All right. If it's too good to be true, probably is.
Yeah, that's the deal.